Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she took the news.
It's graduation season, right? All these colleges, you're seeing everybody graduate, and high schools are starting to do it. And somebody who had a special graduation in her family that she's celebrating, which I will get to on the back end of this first clip, is sunny Hostin. We talked about The View and how dumb they are. Here's, just in case you forgot, sunny Hostin's view of America.
Worry about my children's future, especially my daughter, who now has less rights than I have.
When Greg Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly set their sights on sunny Hostin, it stops being a debate. It becomes a masterclass in exposing a carefully constructed illusion. Gutfeld arrives with his razor-sharp wit, slicing through every inflated opinion with surgical precision. Kelly dismantles Hostin's credibility the way a seasoned prosecutor destroys a witness who can't keep her own story straight. Together, they don't just criticize her, they peel back the polished surface to reveal what's underneath. A hollow core held together by nothing more than a studio audience and a well-timed applause sign.
So, Sunny, I bet you haven't been in a supermarket since COVID for about 3 years.
I haven't been in a supermarket since COVID. For about 3 years. That's when I discovered Instacart. And I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well. And it's so that's been an issue, I think, for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs. You know those big Bounty towels you don't want to carry?
Those from Costco.
Somebody else goes.
The ladies of The View. Speaking of sunny Hostin, take a look at SOT 15.
I worry about the working class. I worry about my mother, a retired teacher. I worry about our elderly and their Social Security and their Medicare. I worry about my children's future, especially my daughter, who now has less rights than I have. And I remember my father telling me many, many years ago that I was the first person in his family to enjoy full civil rights. And now I have less civil rights than I had when he told me that. I think that going forward, the convicted felon box on employment applications better be taken off, because if you can be the president of the United States, then you should not be prevented from employment in this country.
She's worried about her daughter, who is a multimillionaire. I mean, her parents.
If you're enjoying this video, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. The real problem with sunny Hostin, she genuinely believes she's delivering landmark courtroom arguments, when in reality, she's reading bumper stickers with a law degree stapled to them. She carries herself with the intense self-importance of someone who thinks she's single-handedly decoding the mysteries of democracy every time she opens her mouth. What she's actually doing is endlessly auditioning for the title of most sanctimonious panelist on television. Gutfeld wastes zero time turning that delusion into a target. He calls out exactly how she transforms every political conversation into an uninvited sermon that nobody, and we mean nobody, asked for.
She's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she took the news. Roll it.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Megyn Kelly, though, she's the real closer here. Hostin has spent years carefully constructing a persona dripping with righteous authority, but Kelly knows just how flimsy that construction actually is. She doesn't come at Hostin with wild exaggerations or cheap shots. She comes with precision. One moment, she's calmly pointing out the gaping contradictions in Hostin's legal arguments. The next, she's exposing how those same arguments collapse completely the second they're taken outside the warm, cozy bubble of daytime TV applause and approving nods.
Land, first of all, okay? California is stolen land.
The biggest threat to our country today, says the FBI's director, is white supremacy and domestic terrorism. Merrick Garland said the biggest threat to our democracy is white supremacy and domestic terrorism. How do you come together when it's homegrown terror? And we have never addressed why
there is that issue that remains in this country 400 years later.
So we have white supremacists running around this country.
Hostin has always acted as though her credentials give her an unlimited license to lecture. That pretense falls apart the instant Kelly shines a light on the glaring gap between her resume and her actual performance. You can practically hear Kelly rolling her eyes every time Hostin plays the role of the serious intellectual. On a show where the greatest daily achievement is surviving Joy Behar's punchlines. Kelly sees exactly what Hostin is doing, hiding behind degrees and titles while serving up reheated talking points with all the originality of a high school debate team still fumbling through their index cards.
Yes, maybe they're putting Muslims in jail in Afghanistan, I think you mentioned, and China. They're putting a lot of more black people in jail here.
Oh my God. I mean, wrong on so. First of all, those Muslims being put in jail in Afghanistan, no, you dumbass. No, it's a genocide happening right now in China with the Uyghur Muslims. It's been very well covered by your own network, madam. If you would just pay attention to the news that doesn't feature your face, you might actually learn something.
Gutfeld, on the other hand, doesn't even bother engaging with the legal pretense. He treats Hostin like the pompous character in a comedy sketch, the kind who delivers a long, overblown speech while the entire audience laughs at how little substance is actually there. To Gutfeld, Hostin isn't a serious thinker, she's a recurring bit. The slow, deliberate delivery, the moral grandstanding, the dramatic gestures as though she's testifying before a congressional committee. It's comedy gold to him. He points out that Hostin is exactly the kind of pundit who mistakes verbosity for depth and confuses loud conviction with being correct.
So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children to know this information. I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
Fact of life. Interesting change of tune.
Kelly doubles down by highlighting how dangerously addicted Hostin has become to the safety of a set where real pushback simply doesn't exist. On The View, her opinions are treated like pearls of wisdom, no matter how flimsy, predictable, or recycled they are. Kelly absolutely relishes exposing that fragility. She reminds everyone that true authority isn't about sitting behind a desk while an audience applauds your every syllable. It's about being able to stand behind your arguments when someone actually challenges them. To Gutfeld and Kelly, that self-image is the funniest punchline of all. They don't see a serious analyst. They see a performer desperately clinging to her background as a crutch, because without it, there's nothing original left to offer.
First, I was deeply disappointed.
The slave thing is a bummer.
It's a bummer. I
can't control it.
I still believe, I still believe in reparations, by the way, so y'all can stop texting me and emailing me and saying that I'm a white girl and that I don't deserve reparations.
Okay, I'm not going to text you or email you, but it's true.
Guess there's nothing worse than to find out you're a white woman.
She's so disappointed.
It's really disappointing.
Her mother was white.
Oh my
The
God.
shame.
Oh my God.
Gutfeld compares her to a professor who awards herself extra credit for being the smartest person in the room, a room she conveniently controls. Kelly, meanwhile, paints her as a lawyer who keeps losing cases but insists that winning was never really the point. Together, they demolish the notion that Hostin brings anything remotely fresh to the table. The bitter irony, Hostin constantly tries to project empathy and moral clarity, but it reads as completely hollow, delivered as it is from an ivory tower of elitism. And that's precisely why audiences outside her bubble have already tuned her out. Gutfeld has a field day mocking the theatrics, breaking down her entire delivery style, the dramatic pauses, the over-enunciated phrases engineered to sound profound. To him, it's not brilliance, it's branding.
Well, never mind all that stuff, because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered. Yeah, I know, amazing. But that means it's time for...
Living your life and you're feeling low. You don't know what is true. You don't know what's true. So you quick flip through the channels to watch Sunny on The View. Oh my God, the stuff she says is dumb. Where Where the hell they get this woman from? She's a host who's always crass and...
He turns her legalistic style into its own punchline, joking that listening to Hostin is like sitting through a closing argument in a case where the jury already walked out to get lunch. He doesn't portray her as a thought leader. He portrays her as a parody of one, someone who has genuinely confused her own dramatic flair for actual insight. And those famous principled positions of hers, they have a strange habit of shifting with the political winds. Hostin presents herself as unwavering. Kelly pulls out the receipts, showing just how flexible those principles become the moment they clash with her preferred narrative. To Gutfeld, she's the ultimate example of someone whose power exists only as long as the audience keeps nodding along. Remove her from that safe, controlled environment, and the authority evaporates instantly.
You know, I make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to poke it with a stick.
Kelly reinforces the point by drawing a sharp, unmistakable contrast between real influence, shaping public opinion, steering meaningful conversations, leading actual debates, and Hostin's brand of recycled commentary that never moves the needle beyond a soundbite clip shared on social media. What becomes crystal clear is that what Gutfeld and Kelly are really exposing is the emptiness of manufactured authority. Hostin isn't taken down because she's particularly outrageous or uniquely hypocritical. She's taken down because she embodies an entire industry of inflated pundits who have confused airtime with insight. Gutfeld and Kelly simply hold up a mirror, and the reflection is far more brutal than any direct insult could ever be. That's what makes this takedown so devastatingly effective. It's not about cheap shots or one-liners. It's about dismantling the entire performance that keeps Hostin afloat. Because at the end of the day, she represents a broader failure, the dangerous idea that appearing on television is the same as having credibility. Gutfeld and Kelly expose exactly how absurd that notion really is, reminding everyone that authority has to be earned, not staged. And once that curtain gets pulled back, once the illusion shatters, there is no going back.
Israel is saying consistently is, if you want your water, if you want your electricity, release our hostages. In my view, that's exactly not an irrational question.
And they should, but in the process, they should really refrain from committing war crimes.
They're not committing war crimes. The ones committing war crimes are Hamas. The use of human shields is a war crime. They don't want Israel to bomb them, and therefore they've surrounded themselves with Israel's citizens, some 199 of them, and some untold number of Americans too.
This roast doesn't just take down Sunny Hostin the person, it takes down the entire act she built her persona on, leaving her standing in the rubble of her own overblown reputation, with nothing but the hollow applause of her co-hosts to fill the silence. Her defenders will insist she's misunderstood, that the criticism is simply envy of her platform, but that excuse collapses under its own weight. Envy requires substance. You cannot be jealous of a mansion that's really just a cardboard cutout propped up on a windy day. In Gutfeld's eyes, Hostin is the ultimate case study in how modern media rewards performance over intellect. She doesn't need to win debates. She just needs to deliver them in a tone self-righteous enough to trigger applause. Oh, it's the equivalent of a magician distracting the audience with a puff of smoke while completely fumbling the actual trick.
So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children to know this information. I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
Fact of life. Interesting change of tune.
Megyn Kelly tears into Hostin from an entirely different angle, slicing through the pretense that Hostin's opinions carry any real weight beyond the echo chamber of a daytime talk show. Kelly paints her as the textbook example of what happens when someone mistakes a platform for authority. Having an audience doesn't make you right. It just means people happen to be in the room while you talk. Hostin has confused exposure with expertise, as though being televised magically transforms talking points into undeniable truth. truths. The takedown deepens when they contrast Hostin's confident posture with the reality of her actual track record. She positions herself as a fearless truth teller, yet her commentary is riddled with inconsistencies so glaring they practically beg to be called out. Kelly pushes it even further, underscoring how those contradictions aren't just harmless slip-ups. They reveal a far deeper problem. For someone who claims to occupy the moral high ground, Hostin's positions collapse the moment they're genuinely tested against reality.
Hostin of The View, who's constantly raging about race and reparations and how bad America is and his racial past and all this stuff, goes on the Henry Louis Gates, it's PBS, I think, show about your history, and finds out that this is fantastic, she is descended from slaveholders. She's descended from slaveholders, and she's been apparently getting a lot of mail about her call for reparations because it turns out she's going to be paying them and not actually receiving them.
Kelly describes it as watching a tower of Jenga blocks being pulled apart, except the blocks were never properly stacked to begin with. Hostin wants to project unshakable confidence, but confidence built on hollow foundations crumbles with the very first breeze. What makes the takedown so utterly devastating is how easily Gutfeld and Kelly expose Hostin as a symptom of a far larger cultural problem. She isn't just one personality on TV, she is the prototype of the opinion for hire figure, the kind of commentator who thrives not by offering new ideas, but by repeating the same slogans on a loop until the audience claps purely out of habit. Gutfeld labels her as living proof that the bar for punditry has been lowered so far, it's practically buried underground.
This country, it's the biggest threat we face, and she's deeply worried about her children's future. You heard her there. I'm very worried about my children's future. Well, fear not, Sonny, because look at the picture she posted just the other day. Is her son graduating from Harvard? Yes, her black son graduated from Harvard, even though it's a country of white supremacists, and she's deeply, deeply worried for his future. I'm sure he has no chance ahead of him, Stu. The effing nerve of...
Kelly amplifies this by connecting Hostin's entire persona to the culture of daytime talk shows themselves. A world where depth is routinely sacrificed for drama, and where credibility is measured not in accuracy, but in how many gasps a single opinion can generate. Hostin thrives in that ecosystem because she never risks substance. She simply recycles exactly what the audience expects to hear. That's not bravery, Kelly points out. That is a business model built entirely on pandering. And that is the ultimate gut punch. Hostin has spent years carefully packaging herself as a fearless truth teller, a woman unafraid to confront uncomfortable realities. What Gutfeld and Kelly reveal instead is a performer so consumed by the sound of her own voice that she has convinced herself it carries the weight of wisdom, when in fact, it crumbles under the lightest scrutiny. In their hands, she becomes less a formidable media figure and more a textbook case of how the illusion of credibility dissolves the moment it faces a real challenge. The result doesn't even feel like a roast anymore. It feels like a full-scale demolition, leaving nothing but dust where the facade once stood.